Hi and welcome to this week's video. Start of the fuselage. In this video I'll be laying out the fuselage onto the workbench for building, but we've completed the wings, ready for varnish, and sort of final. They've had their final checks, but it's just varnish now on that. We've got the tail feathers, so the horizontal stabilizer, tail plane, that side all complete, vertical fin and rudders all complete. The hours to date for all of that lot, 365 hours total build time. Out of that, 323 hours is for the wings, and out of all of the build time, 75 hours is my modification. So yeah, I've done a lot of modifications, or time doing modifications. That's not including thinking time and calculations and bits like that, as I've done for some of the modifications I'm going to be doing to the fuselage. I have done quite a bit of calculation, so I'm changing things like the thrust line for the engine to hopefully bring that in line, so I'll have less trim changes with different power settings and things like that. So I must emphasize to you all that for the fuselage build, I'm doing it my way. There'll be a lot of changes. These are not my recommended sort of modifications. I'm not saying do them. It's your choice. If you do so, you do so completely at your own risk. But I'm going to take you through some of my thought process and why I'm doing some of these. Some of it's for CG purposes. Some is to do with the fact that I'm 194 centimeters tall, so I'm quite a big person to try and cram into what is a relatively small aircraft. So please join me in the video as I start to mark out the fuselage and hopefully introduce you to some of the small changes I will be doing, which might have a major effect on the airframe. Come on there. Hi, I'm going to start drawing out the fuselage side profile on the table. Why am I drawing it out on the table and not using this lovely full-size plan, I hear you ask? Well, there's one or two issues. Paper plans tend not to be dimensionally stable, so this is no exception. If I measure, here it says it should be 17¼ inches. And if I put the rule across here, measure across, it is exactly 17¼ inches. We're good to go. If I measure here, where it says it should be 24 5/8, going from the front edge of this upright here to the front edge of this upright here, we're 3/16 short. It's 24 7/16. I might have got that one wrong, so let's just check at this one here, and we do the measurement. This one should be 35 5/8, and it's 35 3/8, and so it carries on incrementally all the way down. So the paper is dimensionally stable in this direction, or apparently it seems to have been, but in that direction there it's not, it's shrunk. In point of fact, measuring from the front edge here to the back edge there, it's over 2½ inches out. That's a reasonable amount of error, one might say. So I'm going to take the dimensions because I've got them here for the various stations. So there are the vertical stations. The tail post, I don't know why, is meant to be at some crazy angle, yeah, 87 degrees. I'm not quite sure why the rudder hinge line would be changed, so I haven't marked that line across, but these stations here are 90 degrees. And we've got two stations there, one there and one there. That one's a seat back, that's a fixed position. That's a fixed position at the top here, but where it goes to at the bottom is determined by the rear spar carry through, as I said earlier. We've got these two are verticals, and this is the firewall one, which is vertical on the plan, or 90 degrees on the plan. I'm contemplating changing that. I'm going to be moving the firewall back a little bit because the engine I'm using has intakes running behind it, so I need to move this back to allow for the intakes and not have the engine going further forward, which would really affect the centre of gravity. Somebody did mention to me the engine's heavier because it's got a starter on it, so you know, I've got to think about the centre of gravity because I've got the additional weight of a starter on a hand propped VW engine, which is true, but then I haven't got the weight of the old mechanical magneto either, so 6 and 2 3s I suppose. So weighing the weight of my engine compared to the weight of the engine, a standard one from Team Minimax, where they do a full VW engine, the weights are very, very similar, not a great deal in it. So moving the firewall back will allow for my intake ducting and bits and pieces, and the fuel tank, there's plenty of space because the fuel tank will be mounted as far back as I can to keep it close to the centre of gravity. And I've got to offset any weight at the nose. It doesn't take a great deal of weight at the tail, so if I do need to trim out the centre of gravity a bit, it won't take very much weight at the back end. I'm not sure about the weight of the new style sprung tail wheel compared to the original. That might be slightly heavier. Anyway, and I'm quite big, and I'm behind the centre of gravity, so the centre of gravity will tend to be towards the rear anyway with me in it, so we should be okay. Right, enough waffling on. Next section I'm going to be doing the vertical measurements, so from there down to here on each of these, taking it off the plan. Having taken the dimensions for the top along here from drawing 3A, this is 3V, and I've taken the measurement from there to the front edge of that one there. It says 48 inches, so 48 inches puts it to here, so that's the seat back. It will go from there across to here as a diagonal. So we've got that one drawn and set up. We can't really draw this one, it says here, but that's for the block that the carry through, and you can sort of see the carry through is going to be vertical, so we're not quite sure what the dimension bit is, and that needs to fit directly on the top of the carry through for everything to work nicely. So I'm the dimension from the carry through to that one there, I can take off the wing. That's why I like to build the wings first. I can actually mark those distances and get those precise. Sonics, who do the Aero V engines, say that the inlet manifold dimension goes behind the engine mount by 1 3/4 inches. So my sitting back of the firewall is by 2¼ inches, so it's set back, but that's the 90° line. You can sort of see there's a slight gap there. That's because I'm setting into this firewall a 3/4 degree down thrust angle, so the engine will be down thrust by 3/4 degree and will be left thrust on the firewall by 1/2 degree. That's what I've calculated as being something in the ballpark for what will be needed to help not have trim changes with power settings. I could then increase it or decrease it a bit from there. Okay, so I've selected a piece of wood for the upper longeron that's got the good suitable straight grain, and although on the drawing it talks about splicing, that piece is long enough to go from one end to the other, which is good. And I've been fitting blocks onto my bench to clamp the various pieces to. I've got one piece here, this is curved, that's to force this piece out, because this area here where the wood goes along there has to be curved, so that's a little bit different. Everywhere else the wood is kept nice and straight, so the blocks are in only on one side, so I can just clamp straight across to those, and that saves error. Note, the straight edge along the table there is my upper datum, and then all the pieces, all the blocks of wood are around the periphery, the outside of the fuselage side, because that's the critical dimension. And the other blocks are in to hold the uprights or near upright sections into their relevant positions, again in their sort of critical places. So I've got a vertical piece here just acting as a basic packer. It's now a piece of the 3/4 which it's not good enough, it's got too much run out in the grain. But that's just acting as a temporary packer, and I'll use that to make up maybe a pattern further along. The lower longeron here I've orientated so the growth rings are going vertically as we look at it. I'll put against the block here, and I will draw a line. I do it on both sides just so I've got a reference idea so I can sort of see. I'll now lift out the front section. I'll draw down through at 90 degrees with a square. So just let me get the piece of wood free and I'll show you that. Okay, so there's the line which is going to be the cut line. I look along it as far as I can and produce a mark. I'll go across here. That's that side, so I need to use that side at 90 degrees. Like that. And now I can cut that a little bit wide. I can sand that back on the bench sander so as it's up against the line, and then of course that'll be wire brushed, alcohol washed and wire brushed again to make sure there's no sawdust or dust from the sanding in the grain there at all. I don't want any of that in there. It's going to be quite a critical joint. Once I've got this bit sorted out, I can lay it down into here, and then we can cut off the extra from the lower longeron, which is protruding a little bit lengthways that end and a little bit lengthways that end. Once I've got that chopped, we'll get the two to match together so we've got a nice close contact. So there's the taper cut, and if I put the square onto it there is no gap, so it's perfectly square in that line. We can now start to put that back into sort of position here. Okay, hopefully as you can see I've got nearly all the 3/4 square sections in. I've made up the seat belt mounting blocks pair, so I've got pretty much the patterns now to make the rest of the 3/4 section up. A little bit of an issue when it comes to the vertical for the firewall, the YF43 wood which has been supplied. I don't know if you can see, but really want the grain direction, the growth rings going in that way because the bolts holding the engine on in that direction, but also there are insufficient growth rings there really for it to be suitable as well. So a couple of bits there from the kit which I'll have to just source some more wood to do that. I'm just not happy with that. Been looking at the undercarriage and scratching my head a little bit. It looks like the U channels bolt through the longeron, so I'll have to ask online if that's the way it goes. That would be quite interesting to see if it does. If it does, it's quite chunky holes going through the longeron, so I'd probably end up putting a beefing section on the sides just to help carry the stress through, so it doesn't have that extra localized strain and stress. And I've been looking at the spar carry throughs. They're remarkably small, really. This is the front spar carry through. Literally it just sits on top of a piece of 3/4 by 3/4 there. It's not hugely beefy, only 2 inches wide, and the rear spar carry through is my other issue with a piece of wood. It's the right width and the grain direction is good with a good grain count on it, so it's got good grain count there. The unfortunate thing is that should be 1/2 inch thick, so I can put 16th ply either side, which would put it up to 5/8 of an inch thick, and that's 3/4 of an inch thick already. So I'm going to have to run that through a thickness of planer to get that down to the thickness I need to go in there, well, like that. But hey ho, at least we've got a good grade piece of wood to work with. Well, that's it for the week. Had a great start to the week. I was over at TLAC, which will slow me down for starting on this little project, and doing a bit of Oratex covering. So here are 1 or 2 stills of the metal frame which we started off with, and the tools and equipment they supplied, and then my first side covering, and the second side covering, and the bit where I got wrong. I was trying out my own technique to try and get the radius around the corner. I thought I'd try something else that was different, as I had the opportunity to do that without it costing me a lot of effort, and it didn't work. So back to their method in the future, but I'll be showing you how the covering goes when I get around to doing some covering, which is a long way off now. So keep yourselves well, keep yourselves fit and safe, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye now. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please hit the thumbs up. You can subscribe or even hit the little bell notification for future videos. Any comments would be appreciated, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as I can. Remember, go fly and feel the sky.